Nostalgic America, 1964. Secret places. A great logician born in a cave in the dark could then infer the universe from a grain of dirt. I slept on our wide front screened-in porch, enjoying the wonderful night breezes. It had become midsummer, 1964, and I was 16 and a half. I was in between relationships, which was not the worst thing, but at least it had been a time to recharge. Although now the balmy morning airs were really mixing from the fumes of nature within and without, spurring ever onward the feelings of life, love, and adventure, and that took two. I guess I'd lost touch with the rest of the world, and school was not in session, of course. And so the people were mostly all hidden away in their houses, for the days had been hot. I fell asleep. This was Oak Park, Illinois, just outside Chicago, it being the largest village in the world, having over 70,000 people. After I awoke, I paged through the weekly Oak Leaves edition, noting the happenings of what sounded like Pleasantville. Ah, there it is. I had submitted a piece of writing on the Vietnam War, a poem actually, and there it was. I made some hard-boiled eggs for breakfast and then went out and cut the grass and put new spark plugs into my motorcycle. What would this day bring? I wondered. I thought of dropping everything and riding out to Colorado to see Nancy. Jimmy Nelson was already up in his treehouse. Charlene Faust had just said good morning from the yard, one over in the other direction. As my two neighbors nearest my age, they had become part of my life on that account, but ever mostly as just a part of the scenery. I couldn't really take off for Colorado. A few days later, a most fortunate but totally unexpected event arrived at my front door. It was Joanne's little sister, Susan, bearing an exquisite card from Joanne with her clear handwriting inside.
Here you go. Joanne asked me to give this to you.
This was quite a surprise. A unique happening in my life as it turned out. A one and only kind of beginning. She had been tracking me, and I hadn't seen a thing of it. I'd known of Joanne and her family, but I didn't really know them. But for some times when I saw them in their front yard from the playground adjoining to Lincoln School, where our group hung out at night. The sisters may even have sat with us on a bench on one of those nights some time ago, and in the summer before. Joanne was a year behind me in school. The writing inside the card said that she, Joanne, liked me, as of even a while, and hoped that I would come over, right now even. She said she had planned to come over herself, but she was grounded, to her house, the yard, and the alley. Now this girl had initiative, I thought, to bravely come out of the blue like this. As I recalled, Joanne must be 15 or more by now, I having also noted her at high school catching my eye through hers once, but I couldn't really be sure. She had come a long way from her days at Lincoln, though. My heart literally jumped as I read the card, and so I told the little card bearer to tell Sister Joanne that she had a deal, with me as her new boyfriend. Another shot in the dark, I suppose, but she had summoned me. I gave little sis a kiss on the cheek, telling her to send my love and greetings, with me to follow in a while. She told me that 12 noon would work out well, the time when Joanne could surely escape her temporary grounding. Here I go again, and it looks good. So long to doing nothing, but enough of that already. So, little Miss Lady Luck headed back to Dame Fortune with my information, which I had also written down on a paper for her to give to the bold and the beautiful one. Of all the things to happen, I thought, where and when did this all take form without my even realizing? Had I missed something, or was it just luck? And that card. Such literacy for a junior to be, much less anyone. Its written composition was so excellent that it seemed to be a perfect mini-essay in itself, or at least a beautiful abstract of one, in order to fit on the card. It was time to find out. High noon. I started my motorcycle and rode about 3 blocks. I stopped near the end of Joanne's alley and parked. Maybe I'd walk from there. I observed that a car had just pulled off and away from Joanne's garage, presumably her parents going off on an outing to the relatives or something. They went, fortunately, in the other direction, not that it would have mattered. I then saw Joanne come out, she wandering about in the alley and then looking at a flower. I would have waited until she'd come out anyway, as per instructions. I started up my motorcycle and looped back into the street a bit, then headed back toward the alley. Quickly turned off my motorcycle, turned, and quietly coasted up behind her, quite surprising her. We embraced and kissed, and that feeling was still as new and fresh as ever. She had been grounded for smoking. Sure you don't want to wait until you're free?
No, it's a good chance. I've sized it up. They'll be gone for quite a while.
How did you know I was home and free?
I have spies, haha.
Peggy Tyler across the street?
Maybe.
Feeling adventurous today?
You don't know the half of it. I've had my eyes on you. I'll tell you later.
"1964, nostalgic America, 16-years-old boy and girl." Okay, let's roll. She hopped on the back of my motorcycle. We rode down the alley, though, she holding on snug behind me, and onto Lexington Street, riding down to Maple Avenue, taking a left there, and then a right, onto the large and busy Roosevelt Road, heading on down to First Avenue, as a left, on which we picked up great speed with good vibrations, then all the way out to 31st Street, where there were motorcycle trails, with many hills and jumps that soon sent us airborne. After going around twice, we headed off on a spur into and through some deep woods.
Hey, that was quite a thrill.
After about a half a mile, we arrived at a train bridge that went over a river. And so we set up camp with a blanket on a grassy area, just in front of a large rock wall that was just to the side of the train trestle. A train soon rumbled by and brought unto us a new and exciting vibration. Then it was peaceful again.
She looked fit, sporty even.
You look to be in good shape, Joanne.
I do a lot exercise.
Sports?
Badminton and some baseball. Want to play?
Yes. We looked at each other, kissed for a very long time, and then laid down and eventually played with each other, half in the buff. These happenings greatly enhanced by our being in the outdoors of sun and breeze. I like the outdoors. I often ride out to the forests and the prairie.
I'll be free soon. We can go.
So you're lovable, charming, fun, literate, romantic, and adventurous too.
I am the city and the country, the winter and the summer, the earth and the sun, the flower, the dragonfly, and the soil. A woman for all seasons. I'm the butterfly of love who has just landed on you.
Yeah, I've just been sitting around lately, perfecting the art of doing nothing. It's not easy. We leaned back against the rock wall and lit up some smokes, although I didn't really smoke as a habit. The prisoner had been sprung, and I'd surely get her back home long before anyone could notice. Then, one more day or so and she would be free. I now had a new and adventurous girlfriend just like that, arriving out of the blue, and one who was very literate. Amazing. I took out her card and held it to my heart. Why me? How did this gift from heaven befall?
I like your writings and also what I've seen of you.
She showed me the note I'd sent back with her sister, joining it onto hers to show our union. I thought to myself that we both knew that my note came after her initiative, but I just said, thanks. How did this person know my other writings? I couldn't figure it out.
You'll know more about it tomorrow.
I accepted that because I liked working out mysteries. I wrote down something of the moment and handed it to her. What is this earth with these pastimes so fine? It must be the gift of the universe's fine, sweet Valentine. What loveliness brings such soft summer breezes that caress? These winds are the pressured airs mixing up the rest.
Good first draft. We can reduce the syllables. I love it, and I like it here in this lovely place. I didn't want to wait another day. There are no tomorrows. My grounding was loose. They let me be in the alley. I'll bear it out, though. There's only one more day.
We soaked up the peace and serenity of the place. Had she read my oak leaves piece? She'd said writings, plural, so it sounded like an ongoing thing. Now, who knew my writings? Friends, my parents, school? So there we lay, afloat. The deal had been signed. I'd been taken unawares and had gone with the flow of it. Yes, these were the times of life, love and nature, I thought to myself. We had retrieved for ourselves the winged hours, those that drudges had ever stole and overpowered. Hours gentle and mild, like cleansing showers that fill the cup and freshen the flowers. I wrote it down. Funny how living in love helps writing to just about write itself. As such, these facts of life had so easily and naturally come to us, as with those fresh winds that had made love to the blossoms of May, causing the spring flowers to reach for the light of day. We went through some of the words later, she adding,
Drinking deep draughts of life's sunny delight, the woods burst with the joy of love's bouquet.
We would tell people of this place, we said, but never where it was, we swore. This free and wild land within the crowded suburbs. This forest and its river train place was to be for us, a secret retreat. With her I walked the wooded scene, beholding wonders that were around here seldom seen. The leaves breathed deep in the wandering airs, with the growth of summer thrust upon them green.
We can tighten up the beginning a bit.
So, in this hidden wilderness we wandered as a couple made whole, all of it made possible by the delivery of a card of love, and then we returned to the blanket. She lay down and closed her eyes. Meanwhile, I wrote some more, altering some verses I'd been working on in the days before. She is sweet, soft, and inconsumably wild, even as she just lay there beside me like a sleeping child. Our quiet breathing stirs not the wooded scene as we rest silently on the forest green. I caressed her tresses in romantic rhythm to the contented sighs she sent toward heaven. We slumbered where the grass fledged the stream, half awake or asleep in love's peaceful dream. Above us the branches slowly swayed and fanned away the little creatures that tried to land. The trickling waters played tinkling lullabies while flocks of birds flew the skies. This new relationship had all the signs of life. For a little while more we lay beside the brook, reading with life its most wonderful book, then merged with each other in this sweet nook, and this of her and me was all it took. And ever on it would be fine. Where this rare river ran, far from any home or throne, we'd ever rest by the stream side, just us alone. We'd found the perfect equilibrium. We were poor but rich, home yet free, great but unknown. That this could go so well, and why was still a mystery to me. That I was totally taken unawares was fantastic. Plus it was a delight to be on the receiving end of someone else's love search, of someone's plan. I was in heaven again. The world was no longer blah. I brought her back home to her plain and regular alley. We had been to another world. On the next afternoon into the evening, I went to hang out at the playground, for Joanne was in her last day of grounding and wanted to safely see it through. Seeing that she and her family were out on her front porch, I walked over to the fence for a better view, having to carefully wade through some pricker bushes. Holy Christ! Joanne's mother was my high school English teacher. I really had to smile to myself, for just recently, inspired by Joanne, I had poured forth my mind, heart, soul, spirit, and dreams into a paper that began with, "Love is the finest refreshment of mortal life." Essay on love. Love is the finest refreshment of mortal life, providing as it does a glimpse into the heavenly state, a vision which, if maintained, can last well beyond the initial perception and for all of one's life. So I say that any time not spent on love is time squandered in absolute waste. That if you are idling, not loving, or, God forbid, hating, then life is a wasting. For love is the greatest experience on earth, and so I have often sought it out, found it, received it, given it, and lived it as life's one great happiness. For there is no other joy that compares, love being the truth of all truths. Who has not forgotten that first kiss and the magic that attended it? No one, for first love touches one deeply and forever. People newly in love glow for weeks on end. There is nothing like love, although strangely some do not actively seek it out, perhaps for fear of rejection. But even love's worst pain is sweeter by far than any other pleasure. There is indeed no contest, and to love and lose is second only to loving in triumph. Not merely just a pleasure, love refreshes, creates, invigorates, and provides sustenance of spirit and life itself. Without love there is no life, at least none worth living. When you give up on love, you begin to die. Love knows no laws or restrictions, for mutual passion is a law unto itself. Love is the cure-all, both for those who receive it and for those who give it. The one tragedy in life is not death, but that some people do not love. Aye, nor do they live. For the fear of the one is fear of the other. So, by all means, if you love somebody, go to them and tell them so right now. It is said that the loving are the daring, perhaps because they seek the ultimate adventure, often risking all for that which lies far and above the commonplace, that vision into paradise. Imagination weaves a fairy tale of love and romance, and the mind that is alive soon brings forth the phantasm into reality. Placing our very life and happiness in another through love is the greatest gift one can give, for it is the gift of oneself. Unconditional love is a true gift, one without strings attached, one without any motive for gain in return. Oh, of course, we are human and often love for the sake of being loved in return, and this is not in itself wrong. But when one loves for no other reason than for the sake of generosity and loving, then this is a saintly type of love, which is above all the other kinds. True love loves people for what they are, not for their qualities in particular, but for the person. It's not that we love someone because we need them, for this is quite immature, but that we need someone because we love them. It is, you see, love that is the origin. Love begets love, and love, in turn, begets more love, and so on, making us even more loving to others, until heaven is indeed brought down to earth. Real love is its own reward. Identity is not lost in love, for true lovers do not sit looking only into each other's heart, but rather look outward, both in the same direction. It is a seeming violation of arithmetic that in love two become much greater than 1 + 1, and that the two do not become one, but remain as two, yet still share the same vibration in their souls. It also seems to be a paradox that love, when divided, is not at all diminished, but that each individual love multiplies to exceed the lot. One can never run out of love. It is a miser indeed who withholds love from a capacity that is boundless. Hoard not that which can be given. Give love, and even more love comes back full circle to you. What a joy is it to experience life's wonders with someone you love. Oh, walks and plays and dinners are great enough pleasures when taken alone. But note how much better they are when you have someone to share them with. Another bonus of love is that with it behind your actions, you may soon find yourself doing the impossible, as love's inspiration carries you along through any kind of difficulty. For me, it was an inspiration to write. Love and a kind heart are much alike, and one is equivalent to the other, love being a triumvirate of truth, beauty, and goodness, blended into one great purity. We do not merely love, we are love. We do not create. We are creation itself. We don't just live life, we are life. There are many forms and faces of love, such as brotherly, sisterly, motherly, fatherly, romantic, spiritual, professional, and physical. And it often depends much upon the circumstance which one is the most appropriate form to give to a particular person. But I think you may agree that in all of the above forms of love, there is much more that could be given in any case. Nostalgic America 1964, with a 16-year-old girl and boy. So, she'd figured that I'd know more about it tomorrow. And that had turned into today. I looked at her family on the porch some more, noting that mother and father got along very well. Here was normalcy. The wonder times continued on, unabated, with Joanne, my sweet champion of adventure, love, and literature. In between the regular fun with friends, to whom she had even right away joyfully told everything about our first meeting, very much straight out. But for our secret refuge location, with flawless speech, this endearing all to her, we often read to each other from books from her mother's great library and from our own writings during much of our own sweet time, while lying in the shade on a hill toward the back of the playground. We'd even fall asleep back there sometimes.
We were in a fortunate solar system near the edge of the Milky Way.
Near to the front of the shelter house of this grand Carroll playground and park adjoined to Lincoln School was what turned out to be a very large monolith, in the shape of a dome, the top of which rounded shape now carried a lot of dirt, plants, and flowers. But it was hollow inside, with the entrance concealed behind some bushes, yet little sister New had showed it to us. The cavernous inside smelled of earth and cold stone, which, of course, is what it was, and very solid, as if it had been there since the beginning of time and would continue to stand until the very end of it. We really couldn't fathom how it came to be, yet it was there, of all places. Here we would go to light some smokes during the day and have some privacy in the evenings, even during the cooler nights, adding a fire or a candle. And I still don't know how it had formed, but it was our home close to home. The cavern led to an underground otherworld forest lit by some kind of bioluminescence, or so we imagined. We strolled into a world of children's dreams.
There was a very large monolith in the shape of a dome, the top of which round shape now carried a lot of dirt, plants, and flowers, but it was hollow inside with the entrance concealed behind some bushes. There was an enchanted forest in it, the cavern now since I smelled of earth and cold stone, which of course is what it was, and very solid, as if it had been there since the beginning of time, and would continue to stand until the very end of it. Time began to slow down.
The cavern led to an underground, and the world for us lit by some kind of bioluminescence.
So it was that we developed an interest in finding more secret places in which we could hang out in peace and read and play or whatever. We knew they wouldn't be as easily discovered, nor so fortunately located as the ones found so far, such as this magical domed cavern that was right under our noses and our feet. Meanwhile, we read Longfellow, as that was the name of one of the other Oak Park elementary schools, especially a poem about a leaf falling and fluttering for which we tried various voices, as well as Whittier, another school's name, and Hemingway, who had even lived here as we explored Oak Park and its namesakes. How on earth can one live happily and harmlessly in the world as it is, with people as they are, whilst one nurses malice and sorrow in one's heart? We sat on her porch in the rain the next day. We were in a fortunate solar system near the edge of the Milky Way, out on a spiral arm on the third planet, wherein the ongoing curves of life had blessed us. For we lived in a civilized time, standing upon the shoulders of all those who had paved the way during millions and billions of years into the present. In the summer's warmth that was flooding into us two who were so happy to be alive, as lovers and poets seem to know all too well. We were lying on an outdoor couch on the open-fronted porch with the beautiful and heavy rain pouring down all around us. It's sending a few refreshing droplets spraying our way every so often. We smelled and inhaled the delicious moist air as its sensuousness enveloped us, enjoying the sounds of the drenching that was so nearby and the gurgling sounds of the water coming down through the house gutters. We drew a blanket over us as it got a bit cooler. Snug was the word for it. We were in the field that was beyond right and wrong doing. We made plans to search the world locally first. We toured the areas around the schools of Emerson, Irving, Hatch, and Bayes, and then returned to Longfellow and its park, at which we met another social group of hanger-outers, as some we knew from high school, who gave us the idea of following some rivers, of which Oak Park had none. We mulled it over in the meanwhile. Most of the parks were too open to contain any more hidden places, but for a few benches only made so semi-secret by the night and the overhanging trees, as one in Maple Park. I just now looked on Google Street Level View and found that those benches and their nooks were no more. One end of Maple Park had a large fenced-in garden of secluded wonders that we found by climbing the fence to sneak in. There were vines upon vines about and upon the old and shuttered caretaker's hut from the 1800s. And so it was here that we often lived, too, as like time travelers in a time capsule, being careful not to disturb anything. We stayed as late as we could, each time noting more and more artifacts, for the guy had been quite a collector. This garden too and its hut is gone now, as confirmed by Google. Ridgeland Avenue was said to be named after a ridge that was once a shoreline, and so we dug a bit into the ground of Rem Park and found sand, and so it went. The entire village of Oak Park lies on the shore of ancient Lake Chicago, which covered most of the city of Chicago during the last ice age and is today called Lake Michigan. Ridgeland Avenue in eastern Oak Park marks the shoreline of the old lake and was once an actual bridge. One of North America's 4 continental divides runs through Oak Park. This divide, a slight rise running north-south through the village, separates the St. Lawrence River watershed from the Mississippi River watershed, and is marked by a plaque on Lake Street at Forest Avenue. Then there was the famed and feared Peabody's tomb, but the night and its built-in fears can be conquered, so we found ourselves at the site late one evening. It was quite an expensive monument, there being at least 6 stone nymphs pouring water into a clear pool that reflected the moonlight. Life is indeed full of delicious sights and senses. We soon obtained a map of the county, looking into the more outlying and undeveloped areas, and then rented a boat to explore the Des Plaines River, finding beaches, shores, and coves that were not accessible by land. We would try for the best ones in the weeks to come via land as a challenge. Old Illinois was at hand, some of it as intact as when the Indians were around, and we ever rechristened those nooks with love. The Des Plaines River had taken us through a gigantic cemetery that served all the outlying areas and some of Chicago too, and then through a golf course and a large forest preserve. The cemetery was ever where the ducks were fed, where we lovers feasted on wine, verse, and bread amidst the flowered trees and quiet streams, the home for both the living and the dead. One day we took 12th Street, Roosevelt Road, which was once called the Lincoln Highway, all the way out to Galena, and then to the Mississippi River, and crossed it into Iowa. We were in Driftless, meaning the place where the glacial drift hadn't reached, and it was full of caves, gorges, and deeply carved rivers. Way back, in my freshman high school biology class, we had a revised textbook that was so new that it was paperback bound. It told us how natural selection explained the mysteries of evolution and of the variety of life, which continuum extended from animals to us. It seems that we were once a lucky shrew, at first nervous and darting all about, until the dinosaurs died off, and then we mammals attached to a favorable evolutionary line in which every single one of our forebears on both sides was attractive enough to locate a loving mate, as had we now each other, being born in a civilized time and now free to roam in a democratic country. Yes, asteroids, volcanic eruptions, or a virus had swept away most of the species millions of years ago. But later on, 2 monkey chromosomes had fused, leaving the other chimps behind, DNA while RNA, ever remembering all the survivors. Good fortune had smiled on Homo sapiens. Of what stars did we shine of their stead? Across what ink-black river did we have to swim? To what ends at length did we search for food? In what deep entangled forest were we bred? All this and more we talked about and relived during our travels. William Smith had noted a correlation in fossils in rocks to find the relative rock ages that were possible. At every change in rock strata, certain fossils vanished, while in others they carried on into subsequent levels. What a glorious history we stood upon. School began. Now she was a junior and I was a senior at Oak Park and River Forest High School. A tunnel ran under the land to the Fieldhouse gym. Nostalgic America in 1964 with a 16-year-old boy and girl. Our high school was a massive 4-story building, it serving for both Oak Park and River Forest. No wonder I had hardly seen Joanne there before, but now she was ever present as a glowing spark. In our high school, there was a large and long tunnel going down some steps and then underground, over to the field house for physical education, so that the students could avoid the weather. And eagle-eyed Joanne had noted an unused door on the school side, just to the left of where the tunnel steps began. The room looked to be small, but we couldn't really see into it through the frosted glass on its door. We went around outside to look through its dusty windows, seeing not very much but noting some outlines of desks. Perhaps most of the classroom had been sacrificed to the creation of the tunnel entrance, yet near half of it seemed to remain. We kept an eye on it for days, but no one ever opened its locked door, not even janitors during, before, or after school. This we knew all the more since we had put a thread across the door at its frame, up above, it not having been disturbed. So it and its door had become long forgotten, its entrance even sitting there in plain sight, but not even having a number on it or above it. The door looked ancient, it no longer matching those of the other classrooms. A new secret place for us? We each had an honor study hall during the same period, which meant that we didn't have to be in it, and so we could be in the halls after the bell rang, presumably on the way to the library or the labs. The old door latch of the neglected room easily succumbed to the old technology of being undone by a thin piece of metal. We could get in unseen, but how could we get back out unobserved? The ambient light coming through the window was enough to show the severed room and its remainder to be still in the state as it had been left in its use very long ago. We quickly shut the door, going off to the library to figure out our next move. We decided that it would be best to try to exit the room when the hallway was crowded, rather than when classes were in session, thus not risking being seen by a hall monitor walking by and chancing upon us. We went in for a real good look the next day. It was an educational tomb covered with dust, and was much more interesting than Peabody's tomb. Shock! A calendar left hanging on the wall said that the year was 1937. The vase-like wastebasket full of crumpled sheets of paper had not even been emptied, and all of the dust was unmarked. There was writing on the blackboard, the news of the 30s. A shelf contained old books, some of which were probably valuable, so we made a list of them for Joanne's mother to analyze. My next high school English class essay, On Adventure. Boredom and dull routine have little place, if any, in a life, and it is only by one's own laziness that they are allowed to exist at all, languishing nearby on the doorstep, as it were, as uninvited guests, as all the while terrible complaints are hurled against them. I'm bored, some say, half-heartedly hoping that some new entertainment will appear out of the blue and carry them away from a dreary, commonplace existence, perhaps into a fairy tale. So, adventure calls constantly to us as a cure for the blahs, for routine dulls the senses. Even the greatest music soon begins to fall unheard on our ears, and gradually degenerates into that same old song. Although breaking the chains of routine often requires a burst of energy, adventure can become self-sustaining once the seeds have been planted. Yes, Initially, some hard work must be applied, since adventuring is not every day free and easy in this world. But remember that before all realized realities must come the dream, the creative vision, the attitude, and the outlook that will bring adventure into one's life. Even before the dream comes the yearning, though perhaps dim at first, glowing as a faint phantasm in a fleeting daydream struggling to maintain its shape before it fades into the noise of day. As these shadows pass over the adventurous mind, the vision must be enhanced and then steadily pursued until it at last becomes three-dimensional and real. We often look back later, quite amazed at the wonders that we have wrought. But we had the vision and gave it life. Daydreams are filled with thoughts on promenade, wishes, fantasies o'er the mind cascade. Listen well to these plans already made, for by sundown the phantom shapes may fade. The rewards of adventure are many. Stimulation, experience, and growth are practical results, but foremost comes joy, exhilaration, and thrill, the feeling of being alive. Who has not known the adventure of walking to school alongside a stream, dallying here and there, then crossing over the water on a log, nearly slipping off, but catching oneself at the last instant while skipping a heartbeat? Who has not known the electricity of the first kiss at summer camp, or of the reading or writing of a great poem or story while basking warm and cozy in the winter sunshine, or the thrill of a job well done? If we no longer know such things, then perhaps now is the time to stop worrying about getting our hair messed up. It's all a matter of style, purpose, and vision. To plant the seeds of adventure, one must seek out the uncommon, the unusual situation, the exotic, even in one's own backyard, looking for the odd character, although certainly not those who are unhealthy, the pleasantly eccentric by today's stage standards, the person willing to try just about anything that isn't illegal, the offbeat but upbeat person, the optimist, the exciting prospect, the person with those excitingly wonderful qualities. And so it is that once you find it, adventure begets more adventure, for ideas from all over soon begin to interact and build, until a person rises above mere existence and really lives. Oh, there can be dreams of far-off adventures, from romance in the South Seas to mysterious intrigue in the villages of France, but travel and romance are only a general means to adventure. There are many more, mostly personal, for it depends on what you want from life. Adventure can be had right here in one's own town. Of course, some adventures entail a minor amount of risk-taking and rule-breaking, for that which is often uncommon is often the most extraordinary, and therefore may draw undue attention from those of the straighter world. But I ask you, does not the element of danger often greatly heighten the excitement? Who has not, in the throes of spring fever, slyly disappeared from the school or place of employment on some exciting romantic mission and found adventure in that forbidden quest? Yes, adventure is lived in that delightful middle state in which one is neither drunk nor sober, nor ever reckless, but ever balancing excitement with responsibility, each paying for the other as we walk the thin line between foolishness and safety, the log across the creek. So I say to you all, prime the pump, seek out adventure, embrace it. Use your emotions, get up out of your chair and into the arena. Open up and invite adventure in, give it, take it. Live life with a reasonable passion and with a passionate reason, for adventure will become a living situation that becomes automatic. Then you will say, I'm excited, there's everything to do in this town, the people are mostly wonderful, and I marvel at life's wonders each and every day. The next day we found something in the old and secret classroom from 1937. There was a shelf with some old rocks and bones, and we had found this in the wastebasket of the old classroom. This part was typed, Theophilus, Patriarch of Alexandria, is also the patron saint of arsonists. As Christianity slowly strangled the life out of classical culture in the 4th century, it became more and more difficult to be a pagan. There stood in Alexandria the great temple of Serapis, called the Serapeum, and attached to it was the great library of Alexandria, where all the wisdom of the ancients was preserved. Now Theophilus knew that as long as this knowledge existed, people would be less inclined to believe the Bible, so he set about destroying the pagan temples. But the Serapeum was a huge structure, high on a mound and beyond the abilities of the raging Christian fanatics to assault. Faced with this edifice, the Patriarch sent word to Rome. There the Emperor Theodosius the Great, who had ordered that paganism be annihilated, gave his permission for the destruction of the Serapeum. Realizing they had no chance, the priests and priestesses fled their temple and the mob moved in. The vast structure was razed to its foundations, and the scrolls from the library were burnt in huge pyres in the streets of Alexandria. This part was handwritten, with many words faded. However, this was foreseen by the curator, and a good portion of the books and art were secreted out of Egypt, and even out of the known world in 391 AD, 58 days. Treasure safely stashed. 7 hills, big river, barbarians appeared. All soldiers lost. All ships but one burnt. Escape, storms, repairs on sandy shores with dwarf pines, driven northward, cold, frozen, the end is near. The teacher who had written the above had also traced a coin onto paper by rubbing a pencil on it. The coin itself was gone. We would soon look into it all. We had begun cleaning up the old classroom during our quest to find more clues. When we'd met some months ago, the music of the night had been in the breeze, a prelude borne by airy musicians of the trees, the mating calls of the birds, those that had opened for the cosmic symphony. And mighty Zeus had been there, full to the brim with the jollity of the fat man's belly. By Jove, came Saturnus, so very gray with age, lumbering into the party. I'd have to work on it some more for English class. That summer, the sun had filled the waking and breathing world with the fire of her imagination. I read to her. Fresh winds made love to the blossoms of May, as the spring flowers reached for the light of day. Drinking deep draughts of life's sunny delight, the fields had burst with the joy of love's bouquet, and added, spring had kissed the earth, leaving flowers there, like those whose perfume first scented virgin air, as again the fragrant glen in heaven's prayer had hailed earth's anniversary with flowers fair. And now the season was leading to deep autumn. In a month, the chrysanthemums would drink the mellow day as the falling petals carried the light away. The autumn fog would enswirl, and that mist would upcurl. Into the nothingness of winter, the wisp would slowly unfurl. We headed off to our karate class after school.
Today, we will work on incomplete thinking, said our martial arts instructor. Suppose you go to an assassin's house to wait for him to return so you can do him in, but you are running late and can't find a parking spot, so you park in front of a fire hydrant. Then what?
Hope for the best, one student responded.
That could turn out for the worse, replied the instructor, for it will look odd and the target will note it. Plus, he may even feel the hood and find that the engine is still warm. Besides, your car is not one that is of the neighborhood. The assassin may then even sneak up on your associate, who is watching the house from the outside while you are in it, and take him out. All this from bad parking planning.
Park far away and walk? Asked another student. Even if we're running late?
Now you're getting it, and don't be late.
Yeah.
And don't wait at their house, it could have sensors or be booby-trapped.
Okay.
Good. Now, another quandary. Suppose you and your associates are protecting someone from attack in a hotel room. How do you deploy?
We would have people in the room, plus in the 2 adjacent rooms, and also those across the hall.
That's all?
That should be enough.
You have become a victim of incomplete thinking, answered the instructor.
We'd also have people outside and in the building across the street in case they were going to shoot through the window.
That's good, but is that all? Should be. The thinking is still incomplete, for it is only two-dimensional.
How so?
The attackers could rent a room beneath or above and shoot through the floor or the ceiling. Yes, and what would be even better as a fourth-dimensional answer?
I don't know.
Have the person just be a decoy, keeping the actual person to be protected somewhere else. Then you can capture the attackers without any other worries.
Wow, these are tough.
In these days, on the house's steps still rested newspapers and the sturdy rounded bottles of milk, compliments of Elsie the cow, truly a vision from the grazings of childhood in which we were now teenagers. As we adventured along, we told the tales of the joyous forest to the birds, who soon carried them aloft, thence back into human ears again, the songs of streams flowing freely, and stories of a glowing sky. The birds were, as a species, never deeply known, but seemed to share a special closeness with us, which we knew and felt and saw as kinship. Nostalgic America in 1964, with a 16-year-old boy and girl. Yeah, it was a time of discovery, a time of change. Our senses were heightened, touch went deeper.
Our eyes saw colors beyond the spectrum.
We reached into living things, knowing them.
And the odors called, mixed with emotion.
All things we felt continuously now, as in other times,
Some knew only in rare moments of ecstasy.
when melded happenings had lifted them heavenward. Our ambitions missed, drifted upward each morning,
Outlining daydreams, although still forming.
but rising still into the clear sunlight.
And taking shape, sculpting clouds, then sailing.
Yeah, as we were on and ever on. There were country roads
Quaint inns.
and dilapidated barns.
Ah, the simple beauty of it all.
We danced the song of evening bells rung.
In a twilight zone in nowhere's middle.
Yeah, it felt like we were in some kind of magical place, didn't it?
Indeed, it was a moment suspended in time, where the past and present seemed to blur together.
We began to study the history of libraries, and especially with Joanne's mother, she being a big help. For she was an academic, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Libraries have always been the heart of knowledge and learning, and there's so much to uncover.
With Joanne's mother's guidance, the world of ancient books and scrolls opened up to us, revealing secrets of the past. The Great Library and Museum of Alexandria was the chief wonder of the ancient world, containing an incredible mass of literature, art, and knowledge, from the complete works of Homer and the golden coffin of Alexander the Great, to priceless charts of lost gold, mineral and oil deposits that could change the balance of power in the world today. The loss of the library, burned in 391 AD, has been considered by scholars one of the world's great tragedies. We pondered all this during our travels. The echoes of such a monumental loss still reverberate through history, reminding us of the fragility of human achievement. How could some old high school teacher have known that some treasures were taken out of the Library of Alexandria in Egypt and hidden somewhere?
Because he found an old coin.
Or someone else did that he knew.
We'll have to get the tracing looked up in a coin catalog.
There's a coin shop on Lake Street.
And he never came back to his office for any of his things, such as the books, rocks, and bones.
True. And the tunnel that carved away most of his classroom was built in the summer of 37.
Maybe the janitors thought he would return in the fall, and so they left the remains of his room alone.
Indeed, but he had somewhere better to go. Plus his room wasn't really usable, and no one ever worried about his room again.
They didn't even use it as a broom closet.
No, and there's a broom closet across the hall, so they didn't need to.
Yet he left some clues on a paper in his wastebasket.
Somehow it never got emptied, as he had expected it to be. Looks like those last note fragments were from a ship's log.
Yes, but why didn't he come back?
Either he couldn't come back or he found what he was looking for and lived happily ever after somewhere.
His name and address is still on the blackboard.
302 Lombard, not far from the school. Of all the lost treasures of the world, the systematic and wanton devastation of the greatest sanctuary of knowledge in the ancient world, the Alexandrian Library, is the most stupendous of losses. The destruction of the world's great libraries has been commonplace through history. The great collections of Thebes, Nineveh, Baghdad, and Louvain were all destroyed. But none of these libraries can compare to the myth and legend surrounding the library and museum that was the jewel of the sophisticated culture of ancient Alexandria, Egypt. Legend tells us Alexandria contained a library and museum that eventually held every great work of literature in the world. Every great literary work of the Greeks was there, as well as other collections of Roman, Jewish, and Arabian scholars. What became of all these treasures has been the collective wonderment of historical detectives for centuries. Aristotle, Plato's brilliant student and eventual tutor of Macedonia's Alexander the Great, was one of the first scholars to collect and preserve the written word. Aristotle's collection included versions of Homer that were certainly different than what we know today. Aristotle bequeathed his collection to a favorite student who subsequently left the library to a relative, Neleus of Cyprus. It is believed that Neleus eventually sold part of his collection to Ptolemy, who was responsible for starting the Alexandrian Library. We found the teacher's house on Lombard Avenue. It was long shuttered and in great disrepair with paint peeling off. Dare we enter?
Might as well.
The porch door pretty much just fell off in our hands. There was nothing interesting in there at all, just furniture and 2 pictures on the wall in what may have once been the teacher's study. Scribbled on the wall between the 2 pictures were the words fire and ice. Who the heck keeps a picture of Newfoundland and Texas on their wall?
Well, he was a geology teacher, which can involve landforms and archaeology. The map shows the topography of those places.
This place is a dead end.
Seems to be.
I looked in the phone book and there was a lady on the next block who had the same last name as the teacher. We walked over and inquired. She was the teacher's sister, who immediately put us at another dead end by saying that she hadn't heard from her brother for near 30 years. Furthermore, there were no more living relatives.
He has vanished.
She told us. We left. Outside, Joanne suggested,
Perhaps he's taking all these years to decode the logs or the scrolls that he came by?
When Alexander died, there was tremendous infighting among his confederates as to who would rule his domain. Ptolemy, one of Alexander's generals and reputedly a half-brother, seized control of a large part of Egypt, which included Alexandria. Ptolemy became the most successful of Alexander's successors. Alexander the Great, son of Philip II and Olympias, inherited the crown of Macedonia at the age of 20 when his father was assassinated in 336 BC until his death in India of malaria in 324 BC. He conquered most of the known world in and around the Mediterranean and spread Hellenistic culture into Asia, Persia, and Egypt. His astounding accomplishment in just 12 years, though at a tremendous cost of human life, left a mythical aura around his name. In 332 BC, he established Alexandria, which became Egypt's largest city for 2,000 years. Alexander was embalmed by Eastern masters, swathed in malleable plates of gold to fit the contour of the body, and set in a golden casket that was paraded through his kingdom behind 64 gold-bedecked mules. For months, the funeral procession journeyed from Babylon through Mesopotamia, over Syria to Damascus, and was eventually to end at Aegae, Macedonia, where Alexander would be placed with other royalty. Ptolemy realized what a great political coup it would be to have the remains of the great king in Alexandria. He took an army to the procession and persuaded the leader to allow him to perform the last rites. While Alexander rested in Memphis, Ptolemy built an impressive mausoleum in Alexandria made of the rarest Greek and Egyptian marbles. This became Alexander's final resting place that lasted 3 centuries. In 89 BC, Ptolemy IX, in a great need of money to continue his reign over Alexandria, had the gold sarcophagus melted into coin. The sarcophagus was housed in colored glass and eventually disappeared completely in the centuries that followed. Ptolemy went about creating the most comprehensive library known in the ancient world. The organization of the library was trusted to Demetrius Phalereus, who was familiar with the library at Athens. Ptolemy went about purchasing scrolls and copying those he could not purchase. His goal was to accumulate all of the known literary works of the world, which was an estimated 500,000 scrolls. Ptolemy ordered that all books on ships that called on Alexandria were to be copied. Copies were returned to the ships, and the originals were confiscated and stored in the library. Meanwhile, we traded poems and sayings.
A complete life sparkles like a diamond. Each facet of the diamond contributes its view of the world and adds to the lustrous effect.
Friends and interests are the shimmering glints and gleams of reality's sparkle.
Each face of the diamond enriches the view of the other faces.
All of the facets reflect off each other, combining and then building into the overall brilliance of life.
Which makes you a more rounded person.
Which in turn adds to the luster of your individual pursuits.
Which therefore makes the diamond even brighter still, and so forth and so forth. It is self-perpetuating and of infinite growth.
We had gotten the coin tracing identified. It was circa 400 AD.
I noted, yes, the teacher had a ship's log, which means he might also have had the remains of the ship.
Ship logs could last that long?
They were carved into tablets in those days for protection at sea over frail papyrus.
A 58-day voyage, now that is really far.
It could have been slowed by weather.
Maybe, but why would they want to go such a long way from Egypt?
They had to go very far or someone would find them.
And the notes say they stashed the treasures that must have been the cream of the Library of Alexandria, and then were beset by barbarians. At some unknown point, only one ship surviving to escape.
To a very cold place where they met their end.
Or not, but maybe on a ship somehow preserved there for 1,600 years, in the ice perhaps.
Greenland or Iceland or Siberia.
Iceland was populated, the ship would have been noted.
Now how would they even get as far as Greenland?
I don't know. But the teacher had a picture of Newfoundland on his wall in his study, the next stop after Greenland and Iceland.
That he did. Let us go back and take a closer look.
A 16-year-old boy and girl in 1964 Costa Rica, that he did. Let us go back and take a closer look.
Her rose was the flower that the bee ever cruised, meeting there the butterfly that love chooses.
The bee unfolded the petals of the blossom, then drank the nectar of love's sweet juices.
We float along, immersed in the romantic afterglow, the water sinking into the sands, half drying before wetting again, the moisture rising up into the air. We were fully immersed in love's boundless dream, floating in peace on beauty's quiet stream. Truth was clearly seen. It was so bright and right, for purity's goodness swelled each sparkling gleam. Awash on the love-made shore, we overcame our senses, leaving them behind, unclaimed, as we floated free, quenched in a sunset sea, basking in reflections of the scarlet flame. As ghostly phantoms, specters with human powers known from myth, we lay awash on some distant shore, our senses shining forevermore. Our blood ran warm with the sun's heat at noon, and at night our spirits swept by the swelling moon. Air surrounds us and the ocean flowed through us. Earth's rhythm was always playing our tune. Minutes, hours, and days do ever sequence the whole, as month after month seasons the year all told. Youth, prime, and old age actualize a life, and generations bridge the centuries old. Castle builders laid stones across the sky, and dream merchants gave gifts of unreality. Mirages sprang to life at slightest touch. The impossible became our reality.
By the 3rd century AD, Alexandria had become a cosmopolitan population with conflicting philosophies and religions that eventually turned the city's cultural melting pot into a boiling cauldron of civil dissent. Under the rule of Aurelian in 272 and Diocletius in 296, the library suffered several destructive assaults. Areas that contained scientific, alchemy, and other pseudoscience texts were burned, but much of the rest of the library remained intact. In 391 AD, the last great director of the library fell out of favor with the Christian bishop of Alexandria, Theophilos. It is believed that Theophilos considered the library a hotbed of paganism and convinced the Emperor Theodosius, also a Christian, to burn the library. It is not known how much of the collection was destroyed due to the fact that the library was stored in several buildings. There are reports that only one building was destroyed, and the main collection stored in the library of the Serapeum survived. After all of these disasters, the Alexandriana scholar Parsons wrote in his book, The Alexandrian Library, if there is one outstanding characteristic of the library, it is its genius in surviving destruction. Throughout the entire history of the library, scholars have found conflicting stories as to how much of the library was destroyed during each assault. Only one thing is certain as of today: it has completely vanished.
Could it be that something remains of the contents of the great library? She wondered, as we went back to look at the pictures in the teacher's house again.
We had found a new scrap written by the teacher in the old classroom, which was perhaps the key to it all. Yes, the library's curator, a scholar with the gift of action, spirits its treasures away. With a company of Roman mercenaries, a small army of slaves, and a fleet of ships, he transports the priceless treasures of the ancients across an unknown sea to a barren land, where they are hidden in caverns tunneled by the slaves, only to see his company slaughtered by a horde of barbarians, except for the crew of one small merchant ship that manages to escape. What do you think we'll find out here?
I don't know, but I'm excited to see.
We found nothing on the first picture. No pencil marks, nothing, nor on the other picture. And they made repairs in a land that had dwarf pines.
And this was somewhere between where they'd first stashed the treasures and the cold place where they ended up dead. Fire and ice is written there.
The treasures were buried in Texas. That was the other picture on the wall.
There are dwarf pines on the Jersey Shore. I've heard about them. That was only part way, though.
Perhaps nor'easters swept them too far north to recover.
Sailing was rudimentary in those days, with little tacking, for example.
So this library museum curator sailed a fleet to America in 391 AD.
Why not? For what other place would be safe?
A risky voyage.
But no one knew of the New World back then.
True, but it's still amazing what knowledge would have been in that library.
The barbarians who wiped them out were American Indians, which happened after the treasures were stashed. They were heading back home.
But we have no idea where to look in Texas. Big River.
The Rio Grande.
Ptolemy founded a massive museum and library from scratch. The inventory became monumental. His descendants, through Cleopatra and later successors, all continued to acquire manuscripts and art objects until the museum, and especially the library, became one of the largest storehouses of art, science, and literature that has ever existed. This vast collection of knowledge lasted until the year 391 AD. In that year, Emperor Theodosius and the Patriarch of Alexandria, Theophilos, who was a religious nutcase, decided all reference to anything except newly fanned Christian principles was paganism. They masterminded the destruction of the library's contents. Statues, fabulous works of art in marble, bronze, gold, and ivory, incredible paintings and tapestries, countless numbers of books inscribed on lambskin or papyrus scrolls, even Alexander's corpse, all were to be smashed into dust or burned to ashes. Researchers and scholars pretty much had the run of the place to examine, catalog, translate, and edit, and to publish their findings. You see, the library and its adjoining museum went far beyond being mere depositories. Their halls launched the true science of creative scholarship. The library became the first true reference library, as we think of today, where books were systematically cataloged. In fact, the complex was known as the Place of the Muses. Later empires and nations owe a staggering debt to the Alexandria Library. Few institutions of knowledge have produced so much. Pliny, a celebrated Roman of the 1st century AD, invented and wrote the world's first encyclopedia. Aristophanes, head of the library 200 years before Christ, was the father of the dictionary. Callimachus, a famous writer and authority on Greek tragedy, compiled the earliest who's who. The great mathematician Euclid devised the first known textbook on geometry. Dionysius organized grammar into a coherent system and published his Art of Grammar, which became the model text for all languages, written and spoken. These men and thousands of others labored and produced their epic achievements while working at the library.
This is describing a university.
Together, the library and museum were considered the university of the Hellenistic world. The immense structures of white marble contained picture galleries, statuary halls, theaters for poetry reading, and lectures on everything from astronomy to geology. There were also dormitories, a dining hall, cloisters along colonnades for contemplation, and an animal park and botanical garden. 10 great halls housed different categories of manuscripts and books. Hundreds of thousands of them were handwritten on either papyrus or parchment, and then rolled into scrolls and stored in bronze tubes. We took several weeks to think it over.
The thirsty sun had raised the morn's dewdrops and sculpted a mist, forming clouds of airdrops.
Long the world lay dry in afternoon's beam, till quenching darkness cried forth its teardrops.
We then looked to the earth as from the night sky.
As the sky began to fall, all around the sequined stars floated down to ground.
Oh, it was a crystalline cathedral, built from falling stars in the holy night.
Among the lights that danced in the sky, this haven waited for she and I, a world where flowers bloomed and fountains sprayed. We were on it, a paradise called Earth to glorify.
Now to those of you who ignore life's romance, ignorance, like shadow, has no substance.
The shade is removed by the light within. Feel the rhythm of the universal dance.
Willy-nilly we went, whence all there is to knowing.
Hence thither we went on hither, flowing to find that we were truly free to be in body and mind.
Quenchless, boundless, ever bright and burning, our mind's light searched every dark cavern, probing, imagining, its beam alighting upon the earth or high atop cloud mist.
We found that there's an urge between root and flower, plant and soil, leaf and sun, air and water, day star and planet, valley and mountain, wind and mist, man and woman, forever.
We heard woodlands that once only whispered, meadows where there was once but a murmur, and prairies and grasslands unhushed, full of wondrous sounds, the music from near beyond the human range.
Like living lenses, we mirrored our love in feedback loops, images spiraling above, echoing as infinite reflections that filled up the scene, for that's what love's made of. We're stumped again.
Yes, stumped and more stumped.
Let's go back and take those pictures of Newfoundland and Texas and analyze them some more.
Somehow those pictures have the answer on them.
We went back there and folded them up and took them with us on our travels on some extended weekends. A 120-volume catalog of the contents of the library was written by Callimachus, but nothing of the catalog has survived. It is estimated that the total accumulation swelled to 400,000 to 700,000 at the time of Julius Caesar's infamous arrival in 48 BC. These works included every major work of the ancient Greeks. It was also the home of great sculpture and the workplace of distinguished scholars, like Aristophanes of Byzantium and Apollonius of Rhodes. The complex of rooms for the library and the museum that contained artworks was known as the Place of the Muses. In it contained the sacred writings of the Egyptians and Jews, music scores, medicine and science texts, and philosophy. It is believed that the entire works of Sophocles, Euripides, Aristotle, Plato, and Homer were present, though what was lost from these masters is unknown. Claudius wrote a history of the Etruscans, a civilization occupying northeast Italy from 8th to 1st century, of which we know very little at present. Pliny wrote the world's first encyclopedia from sources in the library during the 1st century AD. Euclid wrote the first textbook on geometry. Dionysius wrote Art of Grammar, which became a model for much of the world's grammarian ordinances. The last curator of the library wrote over 100 books covering 2,000 years of the world's known history to that time. We wrote and wrote, meanwhile, and some I know deeply and humbly see that our species and the rest have no special and designed place here in this entangled forest.
As for we cherished every moment of existence blessed.
Starlight was the origin of our being, the source of matter, energy, everything after.
Permanent, reassuring, unquenchable, it's our radiant soul, a self-winding mainspring.
Men and women can't exist in isolation, for, like valleys that give rise to mountains, the nature of one makes necessary the other.
When they're joined in love, there's wholeness again.
The spirit flows from moment to moment, connecting and savoring life's events.
Drinking in the sounds, currents, textures, scents, and subtle delights.
Creating a being that is self-content. Never struggle against the way things are, but rather become the way that things are.
When you give yourself to the moving whole, natural currents can carry you quite far.
Breathe in all that's good, breathe out all that's bad. Peace flows into you, it's warm, wet, and glad. Feel it spread throughout your body, and then say, "This is the best life that I've ever had."
We took out the map of Texas and looked at it closely.
Holy smokes, there's a city in Texas on the Rio Grande named Roma,
Perhaps it has 7 hills and the treasures.
and is ever in the middle of drug trafficking, for there's a bridge to Mexico there.
We'll be safe. The danger is on the Mexican side.
Could a ship sail up the Rio Grande to there?
No, not now, for it is too shallow, most of the river having been siphoned off by too many other towns. But back then, it would have been much deeper.
I'm ready to go if you are. We revolve, rotate, turn, and go round the sun.
We whirl, gyrate, and circle our most loving one.
So thus we wheel, twist and turn, twirl and sing.
Ever swinging, swiveling, pirouetting, and pivoting.
Time on its lovely stream brings all sweet things to us.
For time's the drink that quenches human thirst.
Water of life, we drink time, it drinks us.
Time on its stream bears all sweet things from us.
Yet it is always now, and that's where life is found.
Time, always gray with age.
Ever hurled its changes against nature's rock, time and time again. Reminiscence weathered, but could ne'er wither.
In those mists of time, yesteryear yet appeared.
So it is that about every 1,000 years the bird of time flies over a mountain. A feather falls. When the mountain has worn itself away, the end of forever has thus arrived, that day. Nostalgic America in 1964 with a 16-year-old boy and girl. Roma, Texas. We had regained the summer weather by taking a road trip to Roma, Texas. Indeed, some of the buildings and gas stations had a Roman motif, some selling faux items from that period.
Someone must have found some stray objects long ago.
We traveled out to the hills, noting one that had a road leading to an excavation in it, which had happened long ago from the looks of it. Most of it washed by blowing sand that had settled everywhere. We looked in. It was empty. We walked to the far wall of the cavern, checking it and the ground with a flashlight. There are still some indentations in the ground here, where the footsteps would have been few. They look like bases of...
Sculptures.
The great library lives on.
Somewhere.
We are too late.
Yes, probably 25 years too late.
we returned to Illinois. Autumn had well since arrived and gone on, but it was a long one. The rustling of the trees came to our ears in this, the most mellow time of year.
The harvest brings fulfillment, yearning too, for autumn is both a smile and a tear.
Riverside, we raised our cups to the zephyr. A diamond wealth sparkled upon the water, seen, gleaming through rose-colored glasses, as we relaxed on the noon thereafter. I looked in the pond, but saw her face, for we had merged in love, she and I.
A fish swam in the reflected sky. Sunset's image had burned the water dry.
We dried the seeds and ate them, each still a glowing ember of memory of the bright days among 1,000 suns.
There the blinding luminosity of sunflowers.
Then sunk the crescent sideways into the sea.
Evening songs had tucked in the planetary paramours, and Jupiter and Venus had pulled the cover of night up and over their bed.
With sparks from passion's smoldering embers, we reignited all that our love remembered, then steamed through emotion's ocean in the relationship of which we were the crew members.
Joanne pondered. The treasures and scrolls of the ancient world are still being decoded somewhere by that old high school teacher.
A whole ship's worth, the one ship that escaped?
No, probably not, but he may have some of it.
He brought them to Illinois from Texas.
That he did.
They are in the driftless area.
But we'll never find them.
True, we probably won't. It's a large area that touches several states, although the Illinois portion is the smallest.
He would have been partial to Illinois, to its caves and caverns especially.
But it's large enough, too much to search.
But it is enough for us that we know that some of the treasures from the great library survived.
Yes, and there will be great revelations one day.
And then we will know where to look.
We could have your mother check with some historians in case anything has already popped up.
Actually, I did some time ago, but she's heard nothing back yet.
It was still fun, though.
Yeah, the best, and all because we liked secret places.
She took me on a wild jungle ride, then purred like a pussycat at my feet. Oh, never did I hear a sound so sweet as when she moaned like a panther in heat.
We kissed at the boundary of day and night, ourselves merging in the blend of twilight. She and me and her, hers, mine, and ours, as the day gold melted into the jeweled night.
Kissing on the rocks down by the riverside, our rhythm rippled the water, raised the tide, rang ship's bells, danced lights across sea and sky, all vibrations from hearts that were satisfied.
Where might we be? We are astride the duality of the yin and the yang.
Winter had come and was going on.
Perhaps we could go somewhere over the break.
If only we knew where the cream of that great library was.
Well, we could only scan the news for some possible related information.
We were in the crystal-caverned dome at Carroll Playground, camping out, having brought a small gas heater, placing it just outside the entrance but blowing in. We stepped outside later. The Earth's day star had set, the twilight dusk putting it to rest. Even if one had never seen the night sky, one could infer the existence of many distant suns shining far away as stars in the black velvet.
There was no moon, and we were away from the Chicago city lights, and so we could see thousands of the glittering jewels of various colors. If these gems had been diamonds on our carpet, we would have been rich.
Arcturus was orange, Betelgeuse red, and Sirius blue with a green companion.
We could also deduce the planets of those solar systems. Such can some things be foretold from existence.
A misty, wide and white highway crossing the night sky was the Milky Way galaxy. Seen edge on, and we could also see the Andromeda galaxy through our binoculars. It was no great shakes to intuit many more. It turns out that in every dark patch of sky, no larger than a grain of sand, that there are over 10,000 galaxies. The universe was surely much larger than it needed to be,
If this universe was here at this time in this place as from an inflating bang, then surely there could be more, making for the extrapolation of an endless cosmos. There was truly much more out there than there needed to be.
So it is that we surmise, reason, interpret, gather, understand, presume, and assume that there are countless numbers of stars and planets out there, as well as endless numbers of universes. What the heck is going on? Why so many? They were perhaps even near infinite, whatever that means.
Why is it so overdone?
Well, infinite largeness is so vast because the infinitesimal is so small, but that's not the direct reason, but more like a reason to a reason, which is that totality would not be as such if it were limited in extent. And from that line of thought, we also know that it cannot be limited by duration.
Eternity must accord with infinity.
Yet there is nothing and nowhere for this everything to have come from. So now we understand that nothing and everything must complete the package, begun by the figuring in of infinity and eternity.
It is the ultimate reckoning. Everything happens everywhere forever from next to nothing.
Many weeks had passed and the school year was already getting on into spring. My graduation would soon be at hand. And that was when Joanne's mother gave us some news from a historian friend.
My mother got the word that some purported pages of a lost book of Plato's were anonymously dropped at a historical society 2 years ago. An attached note said only that more would be revealed every month. My mother got the word that some purported pages of a lost book of Plato's were anonymously dropped at a historical society 2 years ago.
And that was when Joanne's mother gave us some news from a historian friend.
How did it go over?
They declared it to be a most excellent fraud.
Yes, so excellent that it was real, but no more of it was ever sent.
That's odd.
Not if he died.
If he was dying, then that may be why he was going to release it.
Or he was well and just had second thoughts.
Or it is unrelated, but he would have been more than 80 years old. Where is this historical society?
Galena, Illinois.
What? That is in Driftless.
I was trying to build up the suspense.
The picturesque town of Galena lies in the northwest corner of Illinois, where you can find dramatic views of the Mississippi River, lofty geologic precipices, scenic farms, as well as historic buildings. It is one of the most unique areas in the state, harboring rare plant species found nowhere else in Illinois. The highest geographical point in the state is in Scales Mound, the next town northeast of Galena, and the darkest area in the state occurs at Apple River Canyon State Park, located in the eastern part of Joe Daviess County. Because northwest Illinois, and also portions of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, escaped the continental glaciers of the Pleistocene epoch, it is known as the Driftless area. A few interesting facts about the natural wonders. Approximately 271 bird species regularly occur in the driftless area of Illinois. This represents almost 90% of the 300 species of birds that regularly occur in the state. Of these 271 species, 138 breed or formerly bred in this area. The species diversity of the area is due to its geographical location and its topographic complexity. Here, several species of birds reach or are near their geographical limits. Dry cliff communities are found on the bluffs facing the Mississippi River, with the most spectacular examples in Mississippi Palisades State Park, where the cliffs rise 280 feet above the floodplain. There are about 1,632 miles of rivers, streams, and shorelines in the driftless area of Illinois. The three largest streams are the Plum River, Apple River, and the Galena River. 42%, 915 species of Illinois native flora occurs in the driftless area, an area that comprises only 1.7% of the state's total land area. The driftless area is one of the most rural areas of the state, so its public land holdings are relatively large and contiguous, helping to reduce the negative effects of fragmentation. 45 species of mammals occur here, representing 78% of the state's mammal species. The state-threatened river otter and bobcat can be found here. The main breeding population of the river otter in Illinois occupies the backwaters and tributaries of the Mississippi River in Joe Davis, Carroll, and Whiteside counties. The driftless area of Illinois supports 89 species of fish, 39 species of mussels, and 9 species of large crustaceans. 11 amphibian and 25 reptile species occur here, including the state-threatened western hognose snake and the timber rattlesnake. Nostalgic America in 1964 with a 16-year-old girl and boy. I guess we're going to spend some long weekends in Galena.
I guess so.
If he lived in Galena, why would he still deliver it to that historical society there? For chances are someone would connect it to the Great Library and find him.
He was too ill to travel far, and since there were no more of these deliveries, it was all thought to be a hoax. Then no one pursued it and him.
The teacher is dead.
His sister might have known of that.
Which means that he changed his name?
We're stumped again, so close.
Yet so far. In Starved Rock Park, we walked the cliffside trail to the rock that was starved, meaning that it stood all alone.
For some humans, being alone could mean that one was in bad company.
Yet I would hope that one alone would never be lonely, since one would still be with their best loving friend.
Today we were together alone together, but as soul bridged to soul, standing on the rock of the Illinois River near the Iowa border.
When I was 6, I sat on the edge of this cliff, my legs dangling, my mother holding on to me. There are 18 canyons formed by glacial melt and stream erosion. Horses took Joanne and me 8 miles out and back on a sunny autumn day. Meanwhile, we had found an old and ancient churchyard, a large one that yet yawns to receive the deceased, as it has for 300 years. Real cobwebs stretched across the archway. Angel statues beckoned us in, but were really just there to carry forth the souls of the dead to the heavens. An inscription read, "All the world's wealth can't extend the power."
That drains the cup and withers the flower.
What would be the price of a moment's breath purchased from death's hand at this final hour? For several centuries, the library had served as the greatest treasury of learning known to the world and successfully escaped any threats of destruction. What eventually happened to the greatest collection of knowledge and wisdom of the ancient world, as well as the sculpture and the tomb of Alexandria, is unknown. But the beginning of the end most certainly began with Caesar's arrival in 48 BC. There were many reasons for me to visit Alexandria: to collect debts, to gain political prestige with Egypt by settling a dispute over the will of Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy Auletes, which had created friction between Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy. and to enjoy the culture and civilization of the world's most literate and aesthetic city. I offered Julius Caesar, the present-day master of the world, a great gift of hundreds of rare scrolls and art objects from the library and museum. A banquet was scheduled to celebrate agreements to the will. As Cleopatra and her guests reveled, Ptolemy's general Achillas seized the opportunity to attack the palace with a force of Egyptian soldiers and slaves. I sent for reinforcements, but realized the Egyptian navy would cause the Roman ships difficulty in rescuing me. So I ordered some of my remaining soldiers to sneak into the harbor and throw burning torches onto the Egyptian ships containing the treasures. His gift from Cleopatra was destroyed, as were books stored in warehouses along the waterfront, but Caesar escaped with his life. It was estimated that 40,000 books were lost. We pored over the microfilm of newspaper obituaries at the Galena Public Library, finding nothing for the first month, and then going into the next one, and the next. Just says he was a teacher near Chicago and a geologist with one sister surviving.
I think I found it. It's under an alias, Augustus Alexander.
Holy Christ, that's him. With a Latin Roman first name and the library as his last name.
The obit is so short, but it's totally revealing.
Maybe that's all he could put. He suspected that he might die, and so he wrote his own obituary just ahead of time.
And he took his secrets to the grave.
Maybe. We found the remains of his house in Galena. It was scheduled for demolition because it was such a rundown eyesore. Where are the treasures?
I'm sure we're standing on them right here under the lawn.
That's the only place they would be safe.
Let us go inside and root them out.
And then donate them to the world's knowledge.
For sure, but we'll spread it around so it doesn't get lost again.
Our hearts skipped a beat when we saw it. There's a scroll wrapped in bronze on his desk,
It looks as if it might fall apart if we even took it out.
which is why it is back in its tube. We explored the basement with a flashlight. There was nothing apparent, just a furnace, much empty space, and a coal bin room which we looked into, finding it musty, with a few inches of coal, a rolled-up rug, and a lot of cobwebs everywhere. We stood dejected, then went out to dinner, hoping it would recharge our brains, we to return later. The Kid from Hell. From last night's dinner outing, we ate at the Pancake House for a change, not knowing that it was kids' night, but that was fine, for a while. And I will get to that. There were but kids and their young parents and a really lot of really old people as well, whom I guess must go all of the time. I looked at the menu, skipping over half-baked chicken, thinking that it would be half raw, and so not as good as a baked half chicken, and two, bypassed the liver and kidneys. For who knows what hour of the night they came in and from where and who. I ordered a farmer's omelet that had been grown by agriculture. We began hearing the screeching of a child who was maybe 5 to 7 years old. That was much worse than a cat in heat and more disturbing than the scratching of a blackboard. So we didn't detach from it, but followed it to its source as it grew even louder, like howls from the depths of hell. The mother began to drag the kid out, but he began a sit-down strike halfway, for which we knew he'd be dead, deader, and deadest. So he continued to resist getting to his feet, flailing away in every direction, and manages to knock an old guy's full dinner plate onto the floor. The old guy was seemingly unfazed and picked up his food off of the floor and resumed eating it. But we could kind of tell that he was turning into Satan. Well, this kid's mother was whacking and whamming the kid, and then the old guy got one in too. Beautiful silence soon ensued, with even the laughter quieting down until, a few minutes later, the mother and child returned amid some apprehension, she ordering a new dinner for the poor old guy. The screeching soon began anew and heard wham, wham again. But the novelty had somewhat worn off, and so our dopamine systems didn't really send out any more high alerts, and we had a fine meal. But we moved our plates more toward the center of the table. We returned to the teacher's house. Let's look at that coal bin room again.
Even the coal is crushed and useless, she noted. But for some whole coals on the sides of the bin.
The rug has coal dust on it.
Because it was laid over the coals for some reason?
And whatever was rolled over it had crushed the coals in the center. Aha! Let us examine the wall at the end of the coal bin. After some pressing and pushing, the wall folded down, and a light went on, revealing a seemingly endless room. An old sculpture of a black cat greeted us. And there it was, which was a lot, but not a huge amount, about 20 pieces.
By the size of this room, I'd say he expected a lot more to be found.
Or to be moved here, if he has it somewhere else.
Yeah, he must, but we have no clues to that yet.
This is still more than we can handle ourselves.
We'll make an anonymous call and report it.
Yeah, we're really not supposed to be here.